For the second part of Lesson 3, you're going to have to reference your unit circle. I want to fill in this graph. Looking at your unit circle, first thing I want to reference is looking at the angle 30. My units, or my radian measurement is the same thing as pi over 6. Looking at angle 45, my radian measurement is the same thing as pi over 4, or 45 degrees. It's the same thing as pi over 4. And looking at 60 degrees, it is the same thing as pi over 3. Now I want to fill up this chart for sine, cosine, and tangent for 30 degrees, which is pi over 6, 45 degrees, which is pi over 4, and pi over 3 degrees and 60, or pi over 3 and 60 degrees. So looking back at your unit circle, if I'm looking at 30 degrees, my sine will be equal to my y measurement, and my cosine will be equal to my x measurement. My tangent is equal to my y over x. When you divide by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So tangent at 30 degrees is equal to 1 over pi, or 1 over the square root of 3, which is also equal to the square root of 3 over 3. So if I go back to my chart for sine, cosine, and tangent of 30 degrees, I have 1/2, because that's my y, square root of 3 over 2, that's my x, and 1 over square root of 3, which is also equal to the square root of 3 over 3. Looking at your unit circle at 45 degrees, your y is equal to square root 2 over 2, your x is equal to square root 2 over 2, and my y over x, since it's the same number on top as the same number as bottom, that's going to be equal to 1. Because square root 2 divided by 2 divided by square root 2 divided by 2 is the same number. That's just like if I reduced 5 divided by 5. So now looking at 60 degrees, my y is equal to square root 3 over 2. My x is equal to 1/2. And if I have my y over my x, that's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. The 2's would cancel out. And I have square root 3 over 1, or just square root 3. We're going to be using this chart today, as well as this. In each quadrant, there's a different trig function that's going to be negative. All a student takes classes is just a shorthand memory device to help you realize in which quadrant which sign or which trig function is positive. In the first quadrant, this is all. All of them are positive in the first quadrant because all your x's are positive and all your y's are positive. In the second quadrant, only your sign is positive. That's your students. The reason why cosine is negative is because your x is negative, and since x is negative, your tangent will be negative. In the third quadrant, tangent will be positive. This is take. Because when you have both your x and y as negative numbers, a negative divided by negative will be a positive number. And in the fourth quadrant, this is where cosine will be positive. This is classes. Since you have a positive x, this means that the cosine will be a positive number. And remember, your radius or your hypotenuse is always a positive number. That's why a positive over positive will always be a positive number. Now if I'm going to use my reference angle to find the 6 trig functions, the first thing that you want to do is use to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of the reference angle. So I want to find my reference angle of 11 pi over 6. Now if you look at your unit circle, 11 pi over 6 is right here. That means I want to find out this red angle measurement. Now 1 full circle is 2 pi. So if I'm looking for the reference angle, I want to take my full circle, 2 pi, and subtract 11 pi over 6. This is how I'm going to find my reference angle. You can always have reference angles in either degrees or radians. My common denominator here would be 6, so I'll have 12 pi over 6 minus 11 pi over 6, which is equal to pi over 6. So now that I found my reference angle, it's pi over 6. I want to use the first quadrant to find sine, cosine, and tangent of my reference angle. That's using the chart that we just found out. So sine, cosine, and tangent. If you look at pi over 6, that's the same thing as 30 degrees. So my sine here is 1/2. My cosine is square root 3 over 2, and my tangent is square root 3 over 3. So using my chart that you can think of it as a cheat sheet. Sine is 1/2, cosine is square root 3 over 2, and tangent is square root 3 over 3. And my final step is to determine what quadrant the terminal side is in for the original angle and adjust the signs accordingly. If I look back at the unit circle, this is in quadrant 4. This is my terminal side, so that means this is going to be in quadrant 4. And if I look at my all students take classes, in quadrant 4, both sine and tangent should be negative. Only cosine should be the positive answer. So when I adjust my answers here, sine of 11 pi over 6 will equal a negative 1/2. Cosine of 11 pi over 6 would equal a positive square root 3 over 2. And tangent of 11 pi over 6 will be a negative square root 3 over 3. That's how I find my sine, cosine, tangent using my reference angle. The next thing I'm going to talk about is arc length formula. S stands for the arc length, R is your radians, or your radius, and theta is angle measurement in radians. So if I want to find the arc length of a circle whose radius is 5 feet and central angle is 110 degrees. First, change your angle to radians. So I take 110 and multiply that by pi over 180. So my radian measurement is 11 pi over 18. And since my radius is 5 feet, to find out what the arc length is, I'm taking 11 pi over 8 times 5. When you do this, you can use 3.14, which would be equal to 9.59. And my units are in feet, so my arc length would be 9.59 feet. So you should try to do this next problem by yourself first. First thing I want to do is take 52 degrees and change it to radian measurement. This will be equal to 13 pi over 45. Once it's in radian measurement, that's the arc length measurement, multiply that by your radius. Here it's 3. And this would be 2.72 inches. Your homework is on page 947, 14 through 17, 31 through 34, 39 through 51.